In today's video, we're going to be taking a look here at these current conditions, and as always, we're going to be diving into that upcoming pattern. I feel like I've said the same thing in the intro for like a week now, so it's getting a little bit old, but there's not a whole lot to look at here on the current conditions. As you can see, there's a little bit of showery activity here for Washington, moving in right now as we speak, and then a little bit of activity here for the kind of Great Lakes Northeast area. And then I'm looking, but outside of those regions, it's very, very quiet, which, weather can be dangerous. We'll take quiet all day, every day. Let's start out here in the Northwest here for Washington. This is going to be a little bit more of a laid-back video. There isn't a whole lot going on, as we can obviously see. But the upcoming pattern is going to be pretty interesting, and I've really been thinking about the long-range pattern. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. I need to make a video about that soon, but looking at Washington here, in general, it is going to spread through Idaho, Montana, Oregon, probably later on. But we do have these light to maybe moderate in a few spots here. Rainfall going on, and it's pretty scattered, pretty isolated, but it moved through Vancouver Island down through now Washington. Also, some of these areas here in far western Canada as well. All of these areas moving southward into the region. Now, the more major region we have going on is we have a pretty major storm system up here. And we have some showers kind of moving along this area, just like this. This is going to be mostly light showers, moderate in spots, so very, very similar to what we saw in the Northwest. Although we do see some snowfall mixing in here for the lower peninsula of Michigan. And definitely, as we take a look here at portions of Canada, we're definitely seeing quite a bit of snowfall coming down for certain spots for different regions. Again, not a whole lot going on. That's basically it for the current conditions. I guess we'll take a look at Florida. It does look like there's maybe a little bit. Yeah, let's take a look here. Look, there is a couple of isolated thunderstorms here in between Port St. Lucie, I don't know. West Palm Beach here as well. Coral Springs also probably going to get some of these a little bit later on as they're moving southward through the region. So these are coming onshore to that southeast coast of Florida. Now, there's really not much else going on, so what we're going to do is move on, talk about that upcoming pattern. So even though there's not a whole lot going on in the current conditions, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be a whole lot going on a little bit later on. Things stay quiet through tomorrow morning, Friday, October 21st, but what we're going to see is a big storm in general, but also a big snowstorm for this region here. As we watch this play out by about Friday evening for the West, we're going to see snow begin for the northern Rockies, also the northern Cascades here. As we see low pressure spreading in, we see a 998 up here, 994 down here, 1002, which is still considered a low pressure system. Later on Saturday, we're going to see this low diving down here and really building in. So we're going to see this diving down here, and potentially it's going to move just like this. It's going to horseshoe around, which we talked about this yesterday, but this causes a lot of snowfall to happen in these regions. In general, when we see something like this occur, we see this really builds in 982 millibar low pressure center here for the plains, creating a blizzard of sorts here for states like Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, even as far south as Arizona and New Mexico there in the Rockies. Mostly New Mexico, I think, is where they have Rocky Mountains, but I think there's also some mountains there in Arizona as well. As we continue on, that's Sunday afternoon. It's going to be October 23rd. As we reach Monday, morning time frame, we can see a 983 millibar low pressure center. Very strong low. Usually lows this strong don't make their way this far east this time of year. That's just kind of what I've noticed. Usually they stick around in the west. This one tends to, on the model, spread pretty far east. It's pretty flat in its track. So we're going to start to see a lot of storminess here for the northern plains. Still some of the Rockies over here, seeing some snowfall, but really just a ton of storminess in general. And as this one moves up, 988 now by this point, we see a major snowstorm for Canada up there, but also a very strong cold front here extending from this storm. And this is going to lead towards a lot of potential storminess down here underneath where this storm is impacting. We also see our next western storm moving in here by the time we're reaching into Tuesday. So keep that in mind. We can see by Tuesday afternoon, we have a 976 millibar low pressure center. So this is actually intensifying. And we can see a front of sorts really developing. We can see it moving all the way down here. So another cold front situation in these areas, but it's not going to be a whole lot of cold air behind with it. It's not going to be an Arctic blast at all. It's not going to be anything like that. Actually, we're going to get more It's going to be more of a situation where we're going to go from above normal temperatures to near normal conditions. So it's not going to be a huge jump. This precipitation is going to be the more major thing that is even associated with this cold front at all anyway. We see our next storm kind of move in. This one a little bit less impactful, but we do see it move in nevertheless. Just like this, it really quickly moves through, and then we can see it develops down here near Colorado and Kansas and Oklahoma and New Mexico and Texas. Right here in this corner where there's a whole lot of states touching, we can see that there is plenty of snowfall taking place here across the southern Rockies, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah as well. All these areas seeing some snowfall in there. And as we move up, we see it weakens a bit. It's a 999, so a lot weaker than that previous one, but still a pretty major storm system, especially here for the eastern United States this time of year. And we could see that this one is leading towards rainfall for a big handful of states, maybe even two handfuls there of states, seeing quite a bit of rainfall with this low. We can already tell that there's another low trying to move into the northwest as well. So this one will likely move down just like the two before it, and we'll see this type of pattern continue. The only thing I will say is later on in the pattern, we do begin to see more cold air start to make its way into the east where it's more neutral and a little bit less cold here along the coast, which could spell the end of that negative PNA, which I'll explain in a minute if you don't know what that means. This is the end of the model run. We're taking a look at Saturday, Sunday time frame, which will be the 29th, 30th time frame of October, and we do see that this storminess reaches the eastern seaboard by that point. Now, as far as total rainfall, because of all of this, we see basically no precipitation there in the whites, anywhere from a tenth of an inch or less of rainfall there in the grays. Your greens will be a tenth of an inch to half an inch. Your blues will be half an inch to an inch. Your yellows will be an inch to 2 inches. Your reds will be 2 to 5 inches. And then your browns will be 5 to 10 inches of precipitation. You can tell that everywhere except for the southwest really gets their fair share of precipitation. So everywhere in these areas, basically everywhere excluding these areas underneath, we see pretty much a good fair share of precipitation across the board over the next 10 days. Total snowfall here, we're expecting quite a bit. So especially here out west for the Cascades, the Sierra Nevadas, and then the Rockies here. If you're anywhere in the grays, we're seeing a dusting. If anything, your blues will be at 2 to 6 inches of snowfall. Your purples will be 6 to 10. Pinks being 10 to 20. Your pastel blues, which are more of like a turquoise color there, very, very bright blues, they're going to be 20 to 30 inches of snowfall. And then your pastel pinks and purples in there, which would be the ones that are inside the pinks, not the actual pinks that we see that are 10 to 20. It's hard to explain. I don't really like the color tables here, the snowfall from Weatherbell. It's not my favorite, but I do like Weatherbell in general, though. 30 to 48 inches plus there in those pastel pinks within the blues. So what I mean here is these are the pinks that are outside, and then kind of, we don't see it here. This is more of just the pastel blues in this region up here in Canada, but we do see it kind of here for Vancouver, that within this bright blue band, which is a very thin band in here, there is another shade of purplish pink in there. That's what I'm talking about. That's where we're dealing with 30 to 48 inches plus. Now let's quickly take a look at this temperature pattern. We're still deeply involved with some cold air in the eastern United States. This has kind of been the case for a while now. And this is going to continue on through tomorrow. We see the southeast still dealing with it. But in general, this is a dying pattern. And by Saturday, we're going to see more warmth than cool here in the eastern two-thirds of the nation. And we see a lot of cooler air moving into the west. So a negative PNA developing. And what this means is it forces the warm air into these regions, which we're already seeing happening. So you don't even have to take my word for it. You see it happening. As opposed to a positive PNA, which is warmer temperatures out in western North America, it does the opposite. Instead of forcing the warm air up, there's already warm air here. So what it's doing is it's forcing the cold air around from the north to move down into the eastern United States. So we're seeing this taking place. And in the greens, we're seeing 10 to 15 degrees below normal. Those blues within the greens, again, another confusing one, is going to be 15 to 25 degrees below normal here over the next 2 days. So that's a positive PNA pattern. This is a negative PNA pattern, the warm air moving up. So we can see that this is by Monday time frame. We're seeing this taking place. And this is when we see that cold front come through about Wednesday. This is when I'm talking about there's some more neutral temperatures. These light yellows being about 1 to 3 degrees above normal, so not really notable. It's going to be very, very close to normal. These areas still being pretty far below normal, actually, here by this point, Wednesday the 26th. Friday the 28th here, we see the colder air is more over the central United States, and there's actually some neutral temperatures along the western seaboard. Also, some more neutral temperatures out east, but overall warmer than normal, I would say. And we see this cold air once again towards the end of this model run spreading further east. So we're seeing this really over the central United States. Still some cold out west, but there is some signs that we're not going to be in a full-blown negative PNA through this pattern. I think we're going to see a lot of more, potential positive PNA stuff happening a little bit later on. Now, I kind of hinted at it earlier when we were taking a look at the radar, but I've had some thoughts for the long-range pattern, and I'm going to make a video soon talking about kind of the late fall into the winter time. Just a long-range classic direct weather video. But the sea surface temperatures, the temperatures in the Pacific Ocean right now are really, really impressive and leaning me towards a colder than normal pattern overall, just being very favorable most of the time through the late fall into winter. I know that's not a huge surprise, but it's just as favorable as it could possibly get. We have that warm water off the west coast really encouraging a positive PNA, which if you guys have been keeping up to date with these videos, you know how important that is for cold in the east. If you have a positive PNA out west, you're going to see, 75% of the time there will be cold air over the eastern United States, and that's what we've seen the past 2 months because that's the current sea surface temperatures. So I really, really don't think this warm pattern in the east is going to last too long. I think we will revert back to colder in the east for a majority of the late fall and a majority of the winter if those sea surface temperatures continue to look that way. So I'm going to make a video all about that, showing you guys that and really breaking it down in depth. Let me know in the comments if that is something you want to see. Be sure to subscribe, as we will be uploading that video later on, but also daily updates just like this one on the weather. We do daily uploads, so every single day. If you subscribe, that'll pop up in your subscription box. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, and also leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and I will see you guys in the next video.